Hello, I am Bob Hocking, one of the owners of Zimmys in the atrium in Hibbing here. And my wife is Linda Stroback, and we've ran or operated Zimmys since 1990 when it was first called Zimmys. And from then on, it's been a roller coaster of interesting moments in rich Hibbing life. Somebody can leave the range, but they've got the range within themselves, and that's a good thing. As we talked earlier a little bit, we touched on it, I think the museums have changed today, and I think when we came back here, we were starting the restaurant, Zimmys, we thought, what would be unique for people to come into Hibbing? And we didn't see a lot of people exhibiting a lot of items pertaining to Dylan. And so my wife and I kind of put our thinking caps on and said, let's turn it into a museum, but a working museum where you can eat, have a few drinks, look at some of the artifacts, memorabilia, and get a sense of Hibbing, and then talk to some people and feel more comfortable where it's not in such a stiff environment. When you go to a museum, sometimes you're kind of afraid to sneeze or make any sort of noise. And so when people come in here from all over the world, they can get a sense of Bob, and then we talk to a lot of people coming through here. One of the things in this small town that my wife and I and our employees try to do is when people come into town, we try to talk to them and give them a little sense. And one of the things that they are very intrigued with or admire is that is that we give them time. And they come in here and they have some questions, and we try to answer them as best we can. And we believe in what we do. I've been collecting Hibbing artifacts and Dylan memorabilia for quite a few years. And I'm always trying to give people a sense of who Robert Zimmerman was. We all know that he became a star and went on, changed his name, but I've run across so many people that were classmates of his and family, friends, and relatives, and it gave me a sense of who Bob was in Hibbing. So we talk about people. We have people that also donate things, drop things off because they want them, want Dylan fans or Dylan people to see some of the things. So we've had people drop off some very unique things, some autographed items that are the real thing, some signs, photos, those type of things. And so we put them up and exhibit them, and when people come in, they get a sense of Hibbing and the range, and a lot of good things coming out of it. Running a restaurant is far from easy, but when you run across so many interesting people that enrich your life, my wife and I go, it's all worth it, It's like work, and then we get Dylan days, we go, yeah, that's why we're in the business. One of the things I like is, as I'm collecting things, to gather stories and the history of things. We also have journals. When people come in from all over the world, we have them sign these journals of their experience with Dylan or what they like about the area. And I think we have about 8 or 9 of them now, with all these stories of, if somebody grew up with Bob Dylan, or a cute one, somebody had their daughter's baby picture taken with them, or somebody bought a Chevrolet car from the Zimmerman family, and everyone's got these kind of cute little stories that give you a little different viewpoint of what you might read in magazines and that type of thing. So I've talked to people that actually have been friends with him and know Bob before he became Bob Dylan, and that very much intrigues me. Talking with Bob Dylan's old English teacher, or I shouldn't say old, mature English teacher, he's 85 years old, B.J. Rolfson. When the restaurant was just getting started, I talked to him and I said, well, what should a restaurant be? And he thought for a while, and he said, one of the things it should be is like a community center, a place where people gather, a meeting place of locals, where people can talk and feel comfortable and have some food, and kind of talk about their everyday lives or what they're going to do and that type of thing. And we picked up on that. And through the restaurant, we want people to gather and talk and express ideas, and no different than some of the coffee houses too that now are starting all over in different parts of the country and that type of thing, larger towns. But to give people a sense of camaraderie and a sense of who their neighbors are, and the art of communication, because with the advent of a lot of things, I think people have become fragmented with computers and some of the different things coming. People don't talk a lot to each other anymore, so it's a meeting place where people can converse, find out face-to-face what people are doing. E.J. Ralston also mentioned that in one of his poetry readings, that if you look at houses today, there's not a lot of porches on houses. The decks are usually in the backyard. And before, you'd walk by in these small towns and somebody'd be on the porch and you'd go up and talk to them. We've gotten away from that. And that really kind of struck a chord with me and my wife. We want people to gather and to talk. We have a community music night on Thursdays that just ended. And people come and play, and yeah, they make mistakes. And sometimes there's glitches in their music, but that's real music. It's not canned music. And I think that's on the rise up here on the range. In a lot of cities and coffee houses, a lot of bands now are playing live, and they're using sometimes old equipment to get a certain sound. It's not perfect. It's that edgy, sort of gritty stuff, and that's what we like. We like the real deal. And, and I've read a lot of articles on Bob, and a lot of them say how proud he is of the range. He came from a town where the people are hardworking. And he says we're honest. He really likes the honesty, the work ethic, and people can get their hands dirty and they're proud of hard work. So that's kind of the power as people come here. We're kind of a mecca for people to come and to experience something that sometimes we take for granted, whether it be, we've had directors or producers from, they did that movie North Country. We've got producers come here and they go, and writers, and they go, this town shouldn't exist. It still has that small town feel. It still has the architectural buildings and the feel of a small town that we don't see a lot of other places. So those are some of the things. Also stories, here's an interesting story too. We were cleaning the restaurant one 4th of July. We were closed and it was raining, and my wife and I are cleaning. I think we're polyurethane the floors or whatever, and we get this mom and daughter knocking at the door, and we're working, and we mentioned to them that we're closed, and they came all the way from California to see Dylan's hometown. They wanted to come to Zimmys. And so we let them in, and this mother and daughter were driving from California, from LA to New York, and this little 13-year-old girl was like a Dylan encyclopedia. She was like talking all about Bob Dylan and stuff, and she wanted to see, ask questions about Bob Dylan, and I'm thinking, this 13-year-old girl knew more than I did about Bob. Here's a cross-generational thing, a young girl, 13, and Bob Dylan is miles away age-wise, but a lot of the younger folks now are picking up on his words and the importance of his history. He's become a historic icon. He's part of history now. And there was a guy that was at the table, this very table here, and I was on lunch hour, and my wife goes, there's somebody from like Alaska here. They want to see Bob Dylan's hometown. They're going to a concert in Michigan. They don't have a lot of time. Could you spend some time talking with them? And with this person, I said, well, maybe, okay. So I did, and I sat down and had lunch with the guy Jim Foster, and he's a battalion fire chief from Alaska. He sails. He's got a sailboat. He sails all over the world. Anyway, he said, I've got just a few minutes here, and I got to catch, get a flight out of the Twin Cities in Minneapolis, and he said, he's asking all these questions, and I go, well, I said, you really should see more of Hibbing and maybe the Hall Rust, and he goes, well, I don't know where all this stuff is and whatever, and I said, well, here's what I do. I said, do you have much time? He says, well, I got a couple of hours. So I called my secretary, took the afternoon off, and showed him around the Dylan's house and the Hall Rust and some of the areas around Hibbing, and we talked, and so then he goes, well, I'm going to stay overnight here. So he changes his flight, stays overnight here, We talk about Dylan, he has dinner here and that type of thing, and then we see him off in the morning as he goes back to Minneapolis. And to make a long story short, there was a thing at the Wiseman, the Bob Dylan exhibit, and all of a sudden we're in the audience listening to some lectures, and he's there from Alaska. He came down again, and he also has a band, and he's going to play for Dylan Days. They're called the Grunt Monkeys. And so we had a relationship, we established a friendship over this little lunch thing in Bob Dylan. Stories just, there's just so many. And in the restaurant business, like I said before, hard business. But when you meet all these people, that's what it's all about. That's what gives you the kick to do another one the next year. Leroy Hoykala played in Dylan's first garage band from Hibbing, the Golden Chords. And he's kind of a quiet, reserved person. But we got to know Leroy, and he was one of Dylan's bandmates in Dylan's first band. It was Monty Edwardson, Leroy Hoykala, and Robert Zimmerman. And we became good friends with Leroy. He's told me a lot of interesting things about the Golden Chords and their time together. That was a rich history. It was that start, they had their first concert at the National Guard Armory in Hibbing. That was Dylan's first paid concert. And I never knew hardly any of that until I linked up with Leroy. I've got to know a lot of people, and people come. It's kind of a little mecca, meeting place, and the rest is history.